Good morning, everyone. As I always do with these live streams, I'm just making sure that technology is working well, which it has been. I've been really, really happy with the system that I'm a part of. But hopefully, you're having a nice, gosh, it's Thursday. I was talking with someone yesterday who said, Mark, I'll see you tomorrow. And I was like, our interview's on Friday. So then I started thinking, do I have the right dates? And I had to start looking through things. But yeah, for in her case, it's just that a little bit of a pandemic brain set in, which we can all relate to at this crazy year of 2020. But yeah, so let me just kind of make sure that I see what I want to see. So give me a second. Yeah, and there it is. So wow, it's almost like on cue. I was like, I almost know how many seconds to wait to see that things are doing what I want them to do, which is pretty good. So. For those that aren't familiar with me, my name is Mark Sugiyama. I'm from Eclectic Arts here in Seattle, Washington, and I run a freelance media outlet that covers everything from music and concerts to the opera, ballet, film, television, craft beer, pretty much anything that I consider artistic. And I've been doing these virtual interviews and events since May 22nd. So I've been very, very fortunate. Today I was doing a little analytics crunching. This is interview/event number 88. So I think we're actually going to probably crack that 100 barrier before the end of the year, which is crazy to me because I did not set out to have any kind of goal. I was on tour with on a virtual tour with a lovely band called Alice out of LA, and that's what got this whole ball rolling. Many of you know that. And from there, I kept doing what I've been doing, and I'm really fortunate to have a wonderful guest today. So before we get to our guest, coming up, later today at 7:30 Pacific time tonight, I have producer Adrian Biddle, who is one of the producers on The Dark and the Wicked, which just came out like about a week ago. It's a film that I reviewed that I really enjoyed. It's creepy as hell. So if that's your thing, great. Adrian's going to be talking about the film and all the other films that she's had a hand on in terms of producing. And then tomorrow at noon, so lunchtime on Friday, I have Chantel Addie, oh my gosh, I'll have to ask her how to pronounce her last name. But she's the writer and co-star of a show called Dating in Place, which I just reviewed, and they're on their, I want to say, 5th episode now. So she's going to be coming on to the virtual studio here and talking about her show. Friday, tomorrow night at 7 p.m. Pacific, I have the Fun Table Sessions, round 15. Some of you have been wondering about who are the guests. I have the guest set. I just haven't quite announced them yet. So the session is happening tomorrow night. And then on Monday, really early, so you might end up catching this live stream later at 7 a.m. on Monday, Pacific time, we have round 2 with the Soap Girls down in South Africa. And if you saw the first round, you can only imagine what's going to happen in the second round, as we had a really great discussion that lasted over 2 hours, just about the band and the state of things, really. So that's what's coming up. But let's get to today. My guest today is an award-winning filmmaker. His latest film, Rialto, which is a feature, is available now via Breaking Glass Pictures. Please welcome to the Eclectic Arts Virtual Studio, Peter Mackie Burns. So let me bring Peter in here.
Hey.
Hi, Peter. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Mark. How are you?
I'm doing really good, sir. Thank you for taking the time this evening for you.
It's evening for me. Thank you for having me on.
Awesome. So obviously we're going to talk about Rialto, but before we get to that, I would just kind of like to see, as I've been doing with every guest, how have you been holding up during the lockdown pandemic 2020?
Yeah, I think I've been doing okay, considering. I have 2 kids. So I have a 13-year-old girl and a 6-year-old son. So they were off school for 4 months. So they kept me very busy. And they've just returned to school now. So I feel like I'm on holiday now.
Oh my gosh. And so when they're off, did they have virtual learning over there, or they're just off?
We had some virtual learning, and not virtual lending, because I can't lend my children out. They had some. They do a couple of hours a day, and then the rest of the time, I suppose they wanted to go outside and stuff, But we managed to keep them occupied, I hope. I'm often away with work, so it's the longest period I've been at home for a good few years now, So in a strange way, for us to make the best of it, we did spend some time reconnecting, I suppose.
Okay. See,
And now my kids are delighted to be back at school.
well, and I've been talking with other guests about this, that during this time, there have been silver linings. So if it's connecting with with your children, if it's, in my case, talking to guests like yourself, this is something that's I don't know if necessarily would have happened if we weren't in these times, um, based
Yeah.
based on schedules and everything else. So we're just trying to find them where we can, and as I've mentioned to other people, that no one's at their best right now. No.
I don't know if I've ever been at my best, Mark. I'm still waiting.
Well, hopefully it happens soon.
I hope so.
Awesome. So you've directed several shorts, and you've directed 2 features that I'm aware of. And so where did your love of film come from to get us up to this point?
Oh, goodness, I don't know. I think it came from the same place as everyone else's. Watching movies when you were a kid, maybe doing some drawing, doing some imagining, and then later trying all sorts of things, trying to be a painter and failing, trying to be a writer, failing, trying to be in a band, failing, trying to be a designer, failing. So film's a great place where people wash up who've been very interested in lots of other art forms.
Oh, well, hey, that's the first time I've heard it put that way.
I went to art school. I went to drama school for a while. I worked in the theatre.
Oh.
I wrote some very bad plays. I've been around the block. I suppose, like everyone, you get to a stage and you say, well, if I want to do something, I need to try it now. I really need to try. So I started making movies when I was in my 30s. So before then, I suppose I'd been in theatre. I was theatre director, did a little bit of teaching, just bummed around waiting for something to happen. And then when something wasn't happening, I thought, oh, goodness. So I went to art school in my 30s. So I'm a late starter. So I'm an old young filmmaker, if that makes any sense whatsoever.
It does. And so your early work, what was that process like? What got you into like the first few shorts that you did?
I suppose a friend told me a little story one day, and I was looking for an idea for a short film, and she told me that she'd been. This is back in the day. She told me she'd been out and she'd been taking lots of MDMA. So we're talking about the 90s here,
Mm-hmm.
And she had to go round to visit her grandmother and give her grandmother a bath because her mother, who normally cared for her, was on holiday. And she recounted the story to me, and I thought, oh, that sounds like a great little idea for something. And I thought, why don't I try and make a movie, a little short movie about that, because it's set in one room with 2 people. And I thought, I'll give that a go. And I was very fortunate. I managed to write a short script pretty quickly in a few hours, and I shot it a couple of months later. And that sort of, I was so fortunate because I didn't know what I was doing. I sort of fell into the process, and the film was picked up, and it started me off. It gave me a little push, as it were. So I was really fortunate. And, as they say about soccer players here, lucky rather than good. I was very lucky.
So when you, like you mentioned, that you were, lucky and fortunate that it got picked up. So was this something that you like had no budget, just self-financed to get it going, a labor of love, and like you said, then got lucky that someone put some money behind it and picked it up?
And what happened was we still have a thing in the UK where you can apply for public money or government funds.
Mm.
So in Britain we have a national lottery fund. So people buy lottery cards, and some of the money goes towards the arts. And
Oh.
you can apply to organisations which dole out that money to charity. And I was really lucky that I applied for a little short film scheme that was funded. So I got a little bit of money to make this movie, which means I could pay people for it. Took 3 days to do, and I could pay a cast and I could pay a crew a tiny amount of money. So I lucked out. I mean, honestly, I just finished art school and made one short film, and it was my second one. So I was really lucky.
Okay, yeah, because I was going to say that some of the other folks in the film industry that I've had the pleasure of interviewing have told me the number one obstacle for them has always been financing and getting back.
Always. It still is, you know. I mean, what to do? It's become a bit cheaper now in a sense to make movies because of digital technology, but nothing helps like a bit of money to attract people to work with you.
Sure, yeah, no, that makes perfect sense. And then you also did, I want to make sure that I have this right in my head, that you did a documentary. Is that correct?
Yeah, I made it. I was waiting. I'd made about half a dozen short films, and I was waiting to try make a feature fiction film around 10 years ago. And it took a long time for the money for that never to arrive. So with the small bit of money that I did secure, I used it to shoot a documentary film, which eventually grew legs and became, like an 80-minute film. It started off being about architecture, and it ended up being about people. And I was really lucky. I got Sigur Rós, the Icelandic band.
Hmm.
They Sigur Rós, their company saw a cut of the film, and they gave me some music to use in the movie, and it was a wonderful experience. I really like making that doc. I think it's probably online. I can send you a link to it if anyone wants to watch it. It's a bit arty, you know. It has no commentary. It's not a traditional. It's more towards the artistic end of documentary at the time, you know.
Okay, no, I would personally love to see it. I'm always fascinated by any kind of film and any type of genre, so we could talk offline and yeah, I would love to check it out and do a review of it as well.
Oh goodness! Wow, I'm nervous now.
Yes, yeah. I'm one of those people that, at least locally, folks have kind of found out that I try to do what I say. So sometimes when people do pleasantries, oh yeah, that'd be great. I'd like to see it, and like then you send it to them, then they they never watch it or they never review
Sure.
it. I try to hold myself to a higher standard and actually, no, I'm genuinely interested when I say I'm interested, and I will write a review when I write a review. So and
Be careful what you wish for, Mark.
and everyone out there can hold me to it because I just said it. So.
Oh dear.
So you had the documentary, but then your first fiction feature was Daphne, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Can you talk to me about Daphne? Because I haven't had a chance to see Daphne.
Right, okay. I think Daphne's on Amazon.com
Okay.
in the States. So if you want to catch up, um, it was a great experience. My first feature film I made 3 years ago, and I worked with an actress on it, and I wrote the part with my writing partner for this wonderful actress called Emily Beecham, and she's an extraordinary actor. She won the Best Actress in Cannes last year,
Mm.
and she's an extraordinary actor. And it's about a woman who lives in an area in South London that I know very well, and she's a bit disaffected with her life, and she decides after going home one night after a terrible hookup to buy some cigarettes, and a man is stabbed to death in the shop she's in, and she intervenes and saves his life. and it slowly but surely affects her own life. It's a drama, but the character is a woman who refuses to be defined by anything. She doesn't want to be someone's girlfriend or wife or a mother. She doesn't want to be defined by her job. She's a philosophy student dropout who's very beautiful and has traded on her looks for a long time. And she's living the life of a 22-year-old, although she's 32. You know?
Mm-hmm.
So it's an interesting point in her life. It was such a great film. We brought it over to South by Southwest down in Austin, I think in 2018, I think it was, 17 or 18. The years are falling in. This year's made an all-time collapse for me. I think it was 3 years ago. So yeah, probably 17. And it was a great experience. You know, we travelled with it. And Emily Beecham, the actress, she is extraordinary. I'll tell you, you should look out for her. She's been in she was in one of those Coen Brothers movies not so long ago. She played an English Rose, an actress in it. She's half American actress. She's been in quite a lot of movies that are coming out quite soon.
Okay. Yeah, the name actually sounds familiar. I'll have to look her up after we're done with the interview and kind of see her
right, yeah.
Okay.
She's English. She's in the Origin Cruella de Vil story, which will be out quite soon, a studio movie.
Oh.
Be out quite soon. She plays Cruella de Vil's mother in it. and she was in a strange kung fu show, an American show. I'm at a certain age now. She played a character called the Widow, which is a million miles away from the work she does with me. But she's amazing. She's amazing. I mean, check it out. When you see her, go, oh, I know her.
Okay, yeah, no, I definitely will. The premise sounds really interesting, and then just based on what you were saying about her acting abilities and everything else, it sounds like something I would totally be into. So.
But we're hoping to come over to the States and do another movie soon. We're looking at a project just now, so we may come over and make a film over there soon, which I'm looking forward to.
Oh, okay. Maybe we'll talk about that maybe a little bit after we talk about Rialto, which is just. I remember when I was watching that film, and that was, I don't know, maybe 4 weeks ago, before I did my review and everything, that it's such a powerful film, yet it's very delicate at the same time. And I think the delicate part for me comes from the storytelling. And depending on what kind of maybe relationships you've had with men in your life, or your father or your grandfather, it's going to kind of come home to you a bit on some level. Even if it's like a really great relationship with a father or a grandfather, I still think there's something underneath it, just as human beings, that you're going to relate to. How did you get involved with the project? How did it start? Because I know Mark O'Halloran is the one who wrote it, and you directed it. So
yeah, Mark O'Halloran is an Irish writer and actor from Dublin, and I was aware of his screenwriting. He wrote 2 great movies called Adam and Paul and Garage. And he works with a director called Lenny Abrahamson, who made a movie called Room a few years ago. And he's a wonderful director. Anyway, this script came along to the producers who made Daphne. And they said, listen, we have a script here. Would you be interested in... When they told me that Mark had written the script, I was bowled over, and I said yes right away. And I read it. I've never read a script quite like it. It's very interesting. Where you think the movie is going to go, it never goes there. It goes in a very unusual direction. And it's about a middle-aged man, a guy you would see perhaps at work or on the train or the tube every day. Very normal guy, and you might not realize the turmoil he's going through, you know. And I thought there's something so lovely about not real tragedy in people's lives that we may not be aware of, our next door neighbor or a friend, even a member of our own family. you know. And I thought, well, wouldn't it be great to make a movie about a subject matter which is, for me, kind of interesting, about how our men have find it difficult to communicate with each other through, you know, societal pressure, peer pressure, through their own inability to articulate their emotion and the problems that can create. I thought what's interesting about this movie, Mark, is that two men, both fathers, seem to find a safe space where they can communicate about their feelings that they can't in their everyday lives. But the way they do this is in the arena of commerce and the sex industry. And I thought this is such an unusual script and unusual characters. I thought, I haven't seen a movie like this. I'd be really interested to explore it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I suppose that's what got me into the movie. And I cast the actor who plays the lead column. His name's Tom Von Lawler. I'd worked with him in my movie Daphne. He had a small role in Daphne, and he's an extraordinary actor. And I
Mm-hmm.
thought, this guy is amazing. He's in every scene. And I asked him if he'd be willing to come on board, because it's not the easiest or the most accessible of material for actors, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I was so lucky. I managed to get a wonderful cast together. And I love working with actors, especially great actors who are so brave. They're the creative force in the movie. I tend to prepare the way or the ground for them to do their work, you know. And I was really blessed, Mark, that the actors I worked with in both my movies have been so good. They brought so much to the projects that were above and beyond my hopes, you know. So again, lucky.
Yeah, no, I mean, the chemistry between the two Toms that play the two lead characters, um, it carries the film basically.
Yeah,
If that wasn't there, it would have been a whole other type of film. Um,
sure.
and with Tom Von Lawler, his performance is just astounding in the film. And like you said, it's not the most accessible material. It's something that he, like you said, he could be, his character could be anyone that you work with. You see it in the grocery store, down, you know, by the bus stop, and might be your friend even that you normally see every now and then, a couple of times a month, and you would have no idea that he's
Yeah,
struggling with so much, and that it's affecting his own family. It's things about, you know, his father had passed and how he views his father, and it's just like his whole world's crashing down around him. Yet, like you also said earlier, it doesn't go the way you think it would. It goes
yeah.
in all kinds of different directions, and that's what's fascinating about it.
And I thought the idea of the script was very interesting, because this man, make no mistake, um, wreaks terrible damage upon his family, you know. And what I thought was really interesting about the script was, at the end, without any spoilers, the man finds the courage to begin to face up to his actions. And I think, in that sense, although the movie's dark, it does, for me, end on a, and I hope the audience will feel this too, that it ends on a hopeful note. A man is ready to face up to himself and the terrible things he's brought upon his own family, you know.
Mhm.
And I think it's not the type of movie where a man can be in a dark place and suddenly after 90 minutes everything's okay. It's not that type of movie, but it's the type of movie where the man's ready to face his own fears and his own shortcomings. And I thought, well, in life, that's all any of us can do, isn't it? To recognize and begin to face up to what we are and what we're capable of.
Mhm. Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more with that. It's very much a case of, like they say, that you have to recognize that you have a problem, or you have an issue, or you have a concern, or just who you are as a person, and then start taking those corrective steps. And they might be baby steps, but at least you're starting to take them. And his character is definitely, you know, ready to do that. And you're right. that isn't something that you can, as you see during the film, again, without spoilers, that it's not something that he can just automatically, one day he's fixed everything and now
Yeah,
he's,
yeah.
it's
No,
like,
no
no,
quick fixes in my
yeah,
movie.
no, there's too many layers there to work through. But yeah, at least he's starting to recognize and find that turning point of,
Yeah,
who,
it's a deep dive. I love character movies, and it's certainly a deep dive. So the American directors who influenced me, John Cassavetes, you know,
Mhm.
so and of course I'm Kenneth Lonergan, who are just two examples of directors who make character-based work that I find really inspiring, and many people do, of course. That's a deep dive into hopefully three-dimensional characters, and I love the notion. When I was a kid, to go back to your first question, I loved going to the movies so much when I was a kid, but I always wanted to see normal people on the screen, people I could see every day
Mm.
and relate to in my life. And like most people, I love a vast array of movies. But I came to a place where I sort of wish there was less James Bond and more people who live next door to me or in my street. So I think that was a path that I was interested in exploring when I started making films. I love the English director Mike Leigh. He's one of my favorites.
Okay, and that makes sense that you found a real direct interest in character studies and things that are around you and not the the superhero thing necessarily. That might be more for just for fun, but in terms of what you do
Yeah,
professionally, it's like, well, now I'm more interested, in doing into these deep dives. And I'm just curious, did anything with Rialto's story, especially when we talk about the male figures and father figures, did you relate to any of that with your own father?
I hope so. Mark, I didn't know my father,
Mm,
so I'm not terribly sure. But having a son myself, I think, oh goodness, what will my son think? What type of man will he think his own father is?
mm,
And there's a lovely moment in the film where the main character Colm has a beautiful little pleasant scene in the garden with his daughter, you know,
mhm.
and it's a nice and light moment. And I thought, oh yes, this feels like this feels like this man has a life and he has an opportunity. And I had one of those fleeting moments with my own daughter the other day. We're going through the teenage years at the moment, so everything that's wrong at the moment is on me.
Well, I don't have children of my own, but I used to be a teacher for many years. So, and I've worked with teenage age kids. So I've been around at least the mentality.
Yeah, yeah. I forgot myself, just I suppose my daughter reminds me of myself when I was a teenager.
Hmm.
She likes music and she can't tolerate grown-ups or being wrong. So I suppose the thing that we look at in our children that perhaps annoy us are the things that remind us of ourselves, perhaps, at some level, perhaps.
Yeah, no, that's true. And for me, I mean, just being the age that I am now, I keep thinking, well, there's certain things I didn't want to repeat from, say, how my mom or dad, raised
Yeah,
me. And I now I think about this when I go back to the teaching example. My first year of teaching, sometimes if I was getting upset about something with a student, I had to catch myself because I said, God, I sound like my dad.
yeah. I do this every day, and I swore. My stepfather was a rather strict character, and
Hmm.
when I find myself becoming strict for no reason, I think, oh, it was my conditioning. And I love my daughter very much because she says, why are you saying that? It makes no sense. And she stands up to me, and I thought, oh, she's brave. I wish I'd had that courage when I was her age to question authority. Don't
Yeah.
get me
No.
wrong, I don't think that every exchange.
Oh my gosh. Well, And maybe you've done this with some of your short films, but with your own personal story. I mean, you're talking about your daughter right now, and other things of your own life. Is that going to get into a future film or future thing that's strictly about something really personal to yourself?
I think all the films I make are personal in a sense, although I might not be the same sex as the character in Daphne. Daphne was a part of me. She was, she was a big part of me. I'm not a gay man, and Rialto, and I don't have that experience in my life, but many other experiences in all of my work, I think, are autobiographical. Perhaps there's an old adage, isn't there, about filmmakers? A filmmaker can either, perhaps they say, find the subject that interests them and make films in that area and refine and get better, or try to choose different subjects. I think I probably, if it's an easy analogy, but I think I probably fall into the former category. I think I have intergenerational aspects of life, relationships, families, Koreeda, the Japanese director, is my favorite director, my favorite living director just now, Hirokazu Koreeda, who made Shoplifters, which I really recommend if you haven't seen, Mark. It's a wonderful film. And I suppose Tokyo Story by Ozu is my favorite movie, an intergenerational movie about families,
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know, maybe our families are all dysfunctional in a sense. So maybe in my work, trying to make a film that depicts a family, perhaps I'm trying to record and repair it, my own.
Mm.
Who knows?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think, I mean, as any, and you know this because you mentioned all the different things you have in your background from being a musician, theater background, obviously film director, that your art is in a form of expression at the end of the day. And you're going to have some of those things from your own personal experience bleed through, no matter, even if you try not to have it come through,
Yeah.
you can't help but have it come through because you're an artist. That's what happens.
Yeah, I was listening to a little podcast about Joy Division this morning. I'm a Joy Division fan. It's
Mm-hmm.
called Transmissions. I'd recommend it if you're looking for it. I don't know the people who make it or anything, but it's about Joy Division and Early New Order. It's in episode 3 just now. It's worth checking out. And Tony Wilson, who set up Factory Records, famous Manchester label,
Mm-hmm.
was talking about how Joy Division sound like Manchester, and this idea really interests me, the sense of place. And I thought, because the work I make about architecture or about these fiction movies, I have to have them rooted in a real place. And I go and I live in the place and I try to absorb the atmosphere and the way of life there. I find, if anything, that comes out in my work. That's the most autobiographical thing, And I was thinking the other day, where does that come from? I think it comes from listening to David Bowie when I was a kid. I think it comes from Bowie saying that place is immensely important to him. And the early albums in the 70s through to the Berlin period, I remember him saying that, where you are working, it's immensely influential on your work. He was speaking about his own work, like the Berlin period, the Berlin trilogy of albums. And so much so when I first went to Berlin, I went to the flat that Bowie and Iggy Pop lived in. To stand outside and look at the second floor apartment in West Berlin and turn around to discover there must have been about 100 other people doing the same thing. maybe 45 years after they'd left their apartment.
That's interesting. And just as a side note, I've had the chance to cover Peter Hook's and the Lights gigs here in Seattle twice now. So I've been in the photo pit and gotten a chance to shoot him, and that's what he's been doing. Like like the last time it was 2 New Order albums, I want to say, in their entirety. Plus, he did a whole selection of Joy Division tracks as well.
Yes.
And yeah, I've been really fortunate because it's been like maybe 2 or 3 people in the photo pit, so they're not approving a lot of people. So
Oh,
I'm like,
brilliant.
I'm really
Yeah,
grateful that I got to be that close to hear those kind of songs coming from the man.
yeah, extraordinary. They're an extraordinary bunch, you know. I forgot because I grew up listening to them that they're, Unknown Pleasures,
Mhm.
their first album. I was a kid when that came out, and I thought, I've never heard anything like it. And I listened to Unknown Pleasures yesterday morning,
Mhm.
and I thought, these guys were really talented at 19, you know,
Yeah, yeah,
almost fully formed. They were artists, extraordinary.
yeah, and the music stood the test of time,
Oh,
and the production on it, even for back then, it was ahead of its time.
yeah, Martin Hannett, the famous producer, yeah, they weren't mad on his production, and he said, "You guys go out, let me just do this."
Hmm.
And there's good interviews with him on that podcast, Martin Hannett.
Okay,
Yeah, it's
okay.
worth checking out if you're interested in that scene. But they are, when I think of Manchester, I think of Joy Division. That's it.
Interesting, because I mean, for me, growing up being a huge music fan, particularly a heavy metal, hard rock fan back in the late '70s, early '80s, from being here in America, I can only equate like Priest and Sabbath coming from Birmingham. They always talked about
Yes.
steel mills and that kind of stuff, and it
Yeah.
influenced their music. So it might be something kind of similar to what you're talking about the place really influenced, what they ended up doing.
Yes. And how they did it. And,
Hmm.
and perhaps why.
Yeah, and I mean, again, those stories are just kind of stuck in my brain when I was like 12 or 13 or whatever. Talking about like they almost like had to do heavy metal because they're just hearing the pounding
Yes.
of.
The steelworks.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So that's interesting too that you mentioned that kind of thing. So like with Rialto being like a working class area in South Dublin, is my understanding.
Yeah.
That kind of what you're trying to immerse yourself in, that kind of aesthetic then to bring to the film.
Yeah. We went there. I stayed there. And everywhere on pretty much in the movie is where the character would go. So you don't see the sights of Dublin. You don't see the tourist version. You see a version of the city that isn't often recorded. So for me, it's very important if you go to a city that you get those things right,
Mhm.
you know. So Daphne, I shot it in the apartment I lived in London, and everywhere is in walking distance where the character would walk. And that's for anyone who isn't from the area, they'll see a part of London that isn't normally represented on screen, you know. And I think that stuff's kind of interesting. How we shuffle up against each other, how we get by, what we ignore, how neighborhoods grow and flourish, die, and return, all that stuff. I think maybe in another life I would have been I don't know, a social geographer or something,
Hmm.
or a postman. I like walking.
Okay. Well, I think what's interesting too that you take notice of those things in your films in terms of trying to show something that's not the tourist version. That folks that are from that area, they'll be able to tell you right away. Oh, he got that right, or
Yeah,
no, he's way off. He went Hollywood on us, because that would be like if someone shot here in Seattle and they just show the market and they show the
yeah,
Space Needle and they show all the typical stuff. It's like there's so many other things that you could have done, especially from where that character may be located if they're in downtown Seattle, that someone who lives here would know.
yes. I think there's a little, the smell of a place. I like that. And when movies get that right, it works. But when they get it wrong, it kind of throws me out of the world of the story. So I suppose my thing is to try to immerse people in the world by not letting them, I try to grip hold, and keep hold of them and say, look, this is a slither of life, you know, this is what this person sees. I suppose that just happened to come from the two projects that I made. I mean, maybe the next movie will have a different feel or something. It will certainly be in a different city or a different part of a city, I think, or even a different country. You know.
Mhm.
We'll see.
Yeah, as we've been talking about this for the last 5 minutes or so, I start thinking about the scenes of where Colm works, and
Yes.
I mean, it made me feel like I was there. And then, like when he's sitting in
Oh,
his supervisor's office, and I'm not going to be a spoiler, but what happens during that discussion, it felt like you were there in that seat, and I think that has something to do with how you immerse the audience into that area.
yeah. The docks is fascinating, anywhere, and it was really interesting shooting there because they're very romantic spaces. They're spaces of transition, but the large cranes you see them on. When I went to Recce, the docks down there in Dublin, they're controlled by a computer operator in Rotterdam, in Holland. So you
Hmm.
can be sitting in the ship, and suddenly a crane starts to move, and there's an operator in the crane, but it's been operated from another country. It's extraordinary. I mean, it's really interesting. The world of shipping, I find fascinating. It's for another podcast, but how shipping changed the world in the 1960s. When it was redeveloped for business reasons by an American. It was an extraordinary influence on late capitalism, on travel, on commerce, on hundreds of thousands of people's lives and the way we do things and what we have now. So I suppose every port city has a romance, Rotterdam, San Francisco, Sydney, Busan, in South Korea.
Hmm.
It's port cities are interesting. They're about dreams and about travel and commerce and leaving, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, even for us here in Seattle, we're considered like a second tier port
Yeah,
city. And that's, well, during this time, things have been really obviously affected down in that whole area. But so a lot of times when I would cover shows, doesn't matter if it's theater or music shows, a lot of them are right in downtown Seattle, right where the piers are. We don't call them the docks down here, we just call them the piers.
yeah.
But yeah, there's a whole other world there. Let alone if you start talking about like the cruise industry and everything else that would have
Oh,
been here in summertime, that all went out the window. But it's obviously a huge moneymaker for our area. It's
sure.
bringing people from all over the world. I don't know how many times in the summertime, how many different languages I would hear as I'm walking around down there to get to a show, and or see families in areas that they probably shouldn't be, and they
Yeah,
don't know that they don't know it's dangerous down in certain parts at 10 o'clock at night in Seattle,
yeah,
but
yeah.
they're
It's
clearly a tourist.
it's fascinating, isn't it? So we were very lucky with the movie Rialto that we premiered in the Venice Film Festival, and it was my first time there. And that's a fascinating city, and the cruise industry is slowly killing the city,
Mm.
and they're having to ban these huge liners, which bring so many tourists and so much money, but they realize it's not going to happen, you know, it can't continue. And it's fascinating. So I come from a former port city, Glasgow, which, we have an empty dock pretty much now because, ship manufacturing doesn't happen here. In London, because of London stopped becoming a port city when the size of the ships increased because you need very deep rivers, and the
Mm.
River Thames is a narrow and wide but shallow river, and
Okay.
it just really changed the economy of the United Kingdom, and the world actually. Rotterdam just became the European port city. It's I don't know how we got onto this, but a particular favourite of mine. So when a movie came along that was set at the docks, I was in. You know,
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe down the road in the future, you'll have something that explores it even more specifically in terms of the shipping industry and the docks and everything else. So it
oh,
sounds like
it's
such a
so it's so fascinating. The whole world of that. It sounds extremely boring, but I think it's fascinating. People are transported illegally, goods.
mhm.
You name it. You know,
Right.
The world is changed by the shipping industry.
Well, and also too, I mean, if you did do, either a fictional film or even a documentary about it, that it's something that anyone in the world could relate to because it happens everywhere in the world.
Yes.
It's not specific to one area.
Yeah. Although I really want to make a comedy. Yeah, I'd love to make a comedy.
Okay, well, that's kind of a good segue. So you mentioned that earlier that your next project looks like you're kind of scouting out some things here in America. Do you have like a rough idea, like what you is it going to be a comedy, or you don't know at this point what you want to do next?
I've got a couple of projects set in London, which are quite far down the line, and for me, the next movie will be whichever one I can raise finance for.
Okay.
So I've two coming. One's a comedy drama, one's a family political story, which is kind of interesting. I'm thinking I've got a project just on its very early days. I have a project set in Marin County in California, which I'd love to do with Emily, and we've been chatting about it. It's really early days yet, so I can't really say too much about that one. But these days, it's where you can shoot, and if you get the money, I'm at the level where I can't take a few years off. I have to go where the work is.
Gotcha. No, that makes sense. Well, Peter, I want to ask, probably to wrap this up. I have people that have done maybe their first short that I know that will be watching this kind of thing. What kind of advice would you give that new, young, or old, young, and like in your case, budding filmmaker? I mean, what kind of things would you say to them to, kind of get them jump started?
Two things I've found in my own experience, and they're not original by any means. Don't be scared of making mistakes. Make good mistakes. And if anyone tells you there's only one way to do the thing that you're trying to do, run away from them. Run. There's no one way to do anything in making a movie. You find your way. And fail, but fail in an interesting way. Try something. If it fails, you'll learn more. We learn more from our failures than our successes.
Mm-hmm.
And I suppose the thing is, it's to keep going. Don't quit. Find the people you like working with. My next project, my third movie with the same producers and the same company. I adore them. They're my collaborators. It's like being in a band.
Mm-hmm.
I hold them very dear to me, and they put up with all of my crap. And we all have crap to put up with. Find collaborators, hold them very close, love them. They'll bring more to the project than you can bring on your own. And the vehicle, like a band or even making a film, the vessel can hold lots of people's input, and it will make it stronger. So don't try to control.
Really, really great advice, and I love the part about finding the people that you love to work with and love them and embrace them and push them forward, because it's just going to make things better. I've talked about all the time with even the students that I used to have, that you need to fail, but you need to fail forward.
Yes.
And so don't try to be perfect, because you can't be perfect. And just like what you said, you're going to learn so much more from your failures than your successes.
Yes, but don't quit. Don't quit. Keep going.
Awesome. Well, Peter, it was such a pleasure talking with you this morning for me, evening for you, and everybody out there. Rialto is the film that's out there from Breaking Glass Pictures here in America, at least. And I had such a great time talking with you that I'm itching to actually probably watch it again. I've got time today.
Great.
And and I'm looking forward to your future projects. And then, when the next thing that you have coming up, hopefully we can kind of connect again, and then we can start promoting it.
Brilliant. Mark, that'd be wonderful. Thank you so much indeed. It was an absolute pleasure. And thanks everyone for watching.
Thank you. Have a good night over there and stay safe.
And you. Stay safe. Thanks, Mark. Bye.